Good morning. So if you will, consider a scenario with me for a moment. A third world country just experienced a fairly significant earthquake. One of those disaster teams, like Michael talked about, comes in, sets up a field hospital. Field hospital, of course, the situation's a little sketchy because there's security around the perimeter. About the second day, a young woman's body is found outside the perimeter of the hospital, still clutching a small infant, barely clinging to life. She has a totally treatable laceration on her upper left thigh, but she dies of her wounds after she bleeds out. She never went to the gate of the hospital. Why? Well, she didn't see any females around. Although there were female medics inside and they were treating wounded, she only saw the male guards. In her traditional society, that was forbidden, to approach a male she didn't know. And that's why it's important, I think, that cultural collaboration is something we should consider within emergency management. So what is culture? So culture, we are our culture. It is us, right? We're ultimately the result of it. It's that system of values, beliefs, behaviors, and norms that make us who we are. It gives us our worldview that we share with others. It's the lens, really, that we all look at the world and decide what's right, what's wrong, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. That's pretty important, I think, when we think about emergency management. I would say that culture is also like the water in the goldfish bowl. You know, the goldfish swims in it. It sustains the goldfish. It gives them their oxygen. But do you think in that goldfish's little goldfish brain, they really know what the water is? Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but it's all around them. It's part of their world. And so for us in emergency management, we deal with traumatic events. It's no shock there, right? And those traumatic events happen in the culture that exists around us. They don't happen in a vacuum. And so like all other social phenomena, we experience and we have to understand those things through that social and cultural context in which they occur. And so as emergency managers, that's one of the reasons it's important that we keep that in mind, because when disaster strikes, when the goldfish bowl breaks, when the water all drains out, and the goldfish is gasping for air, in many ways that's like the culture that's around us in disaster when it falls away, when that veneer of culture is no longer with us. And we're uncomfortable, we're unsure. And so as emergency managers, it's important for us to think through that process of cultural collaboration. And so the cultural proficiency continuum, I think, is kind of important. And I really like it because it shows us the range of where culture exists. On the one side, you have cultural destructiveness, right? The skinheads. Not only do they not appreciate culture, they actively want to stamp out other cultures that are not like their own. Or maybe it's cultural incapacity. The Afghan women there in a burqa, if we take them out of their element, if we take the burqa off, they might not even be able to function in society. On the other end of the continuum, we have cultural precompetence. So we have that awakening and we kind of know that culture is important, but we don't really know what to do with it. Or maybe we have a little more information, so we have some competence there, but we don't have all of the answers. And then finally, if we're good at what we do, we get to cultural proficiency, where not only do we know culture is important, but we put it into all of our planning, all of our operations. We consider it in everything we do. So I skipped one, right? Well, why did I do that? Well, I skipped cultural blindness because I think that's where we, as emergency managers, in particular on the government side, it's where we like to operate, right? Everybody's blue, like the Blue Man Group. In the military, we were all green. Didn't matter what color we were. And that works, right? Everybody's treated equal. Nobody can complain that they're not being treated equally. And that works well if you're trying to beat a lawsuit, but I'm not sure it works so well within emergency management. We may need to go a little bit beyond cultural blindness and get to something that works better. And so we're not all equal, right? We have differences in our language and our literacy, the role of the family and how we operate, maybe the key decision we make in an evacuation situation. Gender, as I mentioned in my opening example, could be critical to saving lives in certain situations. Religious practices, death rituals in some societies, we can't just accommodate those in a mass casualty situation, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't think about those things. And of course, minority populations, even in the most homogeneous country around, you deal with minority populations, and they're very important in many cases. And of course, there's tons more of these cultural factors that we need to think about. So we said that cultural blindness gets us to equality, but that's not good enough in emergency management because although everyone's treated equally, we're not effective in getting everyone to the threshold level, to that effectiveness where we're providing everyone with what they need. Because we got cultural proficiency gets us from equality to equity, right? We don't just need to give everybody a box. That's what cultural blindness tells us to do. But not everybody needs a box. Some people don't need a box at all. Some people need 2 boxes, right? And so getting to cultural proficiency and considering culture tells us who needs the box, how many boxes do they need, and when do they need it. And so we need to think about that. Cultural proficiency emergency management, it's easy to do. There's a lot of things you can do. You can develop your plans, integrate culture with your community members, build it into your exercises. If you do that and you build it around what cultural communities will actually do, you'll be much more effective. The benefits of culturally proficient emergency management are many, and they're fairly cheap. You don't have to buy a lot of stuff. You don't have to do a lot of training. You just have to think through those processes just like you think through all of the processes. And so finally, I would argue that cultural collaboration is like the Chinese character Wei Ji. It's translated as crisis in Chinese, Wei being the character for danger, and Ji being the character for opportunity. And so if we incorporate cultural collaboration into what we do, I think we'll take that danger and that crisis and hopefully translate it into some opportunity, into some effectiveness. So thanks for listening, and consider culture in what you do.